Have you ever noticed that one person at every gathering who everyone secretly wants to talk to? You probably think they were just born that way. They weren't. Here's what's actually going on. That person you can't stop watching across the room, the one everyone drifts toward without even noticing they're doing it, almost never got that way by accident. And it's almost never because of what you'd guess. Think about the last party or work event you went to. There was probably one person who, by the end of the night, had 3 different people laughing near them. You probably told yourself they're just naturally charming, or they've lived some exciting life you haven't. Here's the strange part. If you actually watch that person closely, you'd notice they talk the least. They ask the questions. Everyone else did the talking. And somehow, they're the one people couldn't stop thinking about afterward. That's the part almost nobody tells you. Being interesting has very little to do with having the best stories in the room. It has to do with something almost backwards from what you'd expect. So let's get into why this works, because once you understand the mechanism, you can use it the very next time you're stuck in a conversation. The first thing to understand is this. The person everyone calls fascinating is usually the one who's most fascinated by everyone else. This isn't a new idea. Dale Carnegie wrote about it almost 100 years ago. You'll make more friends in 2 months by being interested in people than in 2 years trying to make people interested in you. That single idea holds up almost perfectly today. Researcher Vanessa Van Edwards explored this in her book Captivate. Imagine every person you talk to has a hidden switch somewhere inside them. Most conversations never find it. But when you do, when you hit the one topic that makes their eyes widen and their voice speed up, the whole conversation changes. They start talking faster. They lean in. They forget to check their phone. Picture this. You're at a dinner, and the man next to you mentions, almost as a throwaway line, that he restores old motorcycles in his garage. Most people would say, "Oh, cool," and move on to the next topic. But if you lean in and ask what the hardest part of restoring an old engine actually is, something shifts. He sits up a little. His voice gets faster. 20 minutes later, he's still talking, and you've said maybe 12 words the entire time. At the end of the night, he tells his wife he had the best conversation he's had in months. With you, the person who barely spoke. That's the trick hiding in plain sight. You didn't perform. You didn't tell a single story. You just found the one thing that mattered to him and let him run with it. Now here's the part that's a little harder to hear. None of this works if there's nothing behind it. If your week looks like wake up, work, scroll, sleep, repeat, then even finding someone's hot button won't save the conversation for long. You'll run out of things to ask, things to add, things to connect to. Not because you're boring as a person, but because the well is empty. There's nothing in there to draw from. This is the quiet truth most advice skips. You don't become interesting the moment you open your mouth. You become interesting from how you spend your Tuesdays. The conversation is just where that life finally gets reported back. Think about anyone you know who always seems to have something to say. It's rarely because they're naturally witty. It's because they said yes to the weekend trip nobody else wanted to plan. They tried the class that sounded a bit embarrassing to sign up for. They read something outside their usual lane last month. They built actual opinions about something other than the weather or the news cycle. None of that is glamorous. It's just slightly inconvenient on purpose, on a regular basis. So if your stories feel thin lately, that's not a personality problem. That's a calendar problem. Go fill the calendar with one slightly inconvenient thing, and the stories will follow on their own. Quick pause. If this is useful, subscribing just means more of this lands in front of you later. That's the only ask. Let's keep going. Here's a fast way to lose someone's attention completely. Stay vague. The trip was nice. It was fun, you know. Those sentences carry no weight at all. Nobody leans in for nice. Nobody repeats fun to a friend later. Now watch what happens when you add detail. Instead of the trip was nice, try, We took a wrong turn on the second night and ended up in this town that wasn't even on our map. We found one restaurant still open, and the owner, this older man who'd clearly been doing this for 40 years, just brought out whatever he wanted us to eat without asking. We didn't see a menu the entire night. Same trip. Completely different effect. One version disappears the second you say it. The other gets repeated at dinner parties for years. The specific details you keep leaving out, thinking they're too small to mention, are usually the exact things worth mentioning. Specificity isn't a writing trick. It's the entire difference between forgettable and memorable. There's one more piece, and it's the one most people avoid on purpose. A lot of us were quietly trained to agree with everything. Nod along, smile, say totally yeah to whatever's said just to keep things smooth. It works in a way. Nobody gets annoyed at you, but nobody remembers you either. You become safe, and safe is just another word for invisible. People who come across as interesting tend to actually say what they think. Not loudly, not to start an argument, just honestly. Honestly, I didn't really get the hype around that movie lands completely differently than yeah, it was good. The second sentence ends the conversation. The first one gives the other person something to hold on to. They can agree with you. They can disagree. Either way, you've given them a door to walk through. A flat answer doesn't have a door at all. You don't need a controversial opinion. You just need an actual one. So if you string all of this together, none of it is a performance and none of it requires a personality transplant. Get curious about the person across from you instead of trying to impress them. Go live in a way that gives you something worth bringing to the table. Trade your vague answers for specific ones. And once in a while, say what you actually think, gently, honestly, without flinching. Try just one of these the next time you're stuck somewhere you'd rather not be, and watch what happens to the room. People will start drifting toward you without quite knowing why. And once you've got this part down, there's a sharper skill sitting right next to it. Being quick enough in the moment to say the right thing at exactly the right second. That's a different muscle entirely, and I made a full video on building it. It's linked right on your screen. Go watch that one next.